Okay, good morning, everyone. Hopefully, this first introduction to CLIL and to strategic financial management will be helpful. Let's see how it goes. Please write your names in the chat so that I can understand exactly who's listening, who's watching. And now we start. So, as I said, this is a first introduction to what is our next and last subject, i.e. the study of how companies strategically finance themselves, both in terms of short-term funding and in terms of how they proceed with strategic moves like acquisitions, or they decide whether to list themselves on the stock exchange or to issue public bonds, or finally, if a startup needs some money and wants to go and get the money from a private equity firm, or prefers to use a crowdfunding source. So it's a pretty broad subject. We'll try to be make it interesting and basically make sure that you understand the basic of finance, corporate finance. So it's basically an online course given the conditions and the fact that we cannot be in classes, so it will have its challenges. But I would say that in scope and in methodology, little will change. So there will be all these topics that will take more time than usual. So I started 1 week earlier than last year. So we will have roughly 20 to 28 hours to cover the subject. And we will use a CLIL methodology. So what is CLIL? It's content and language integrated learning, which means that you will learn something about corporate finance and you will learn it in English. So for non-English speakers, this means that you will have a double task. But at the same time, the learning process, you'll see, it's very different and it will help you out in understanding the concepts and also will improve dramatically your capabilities of expressing yourself in English, okay? So at least this is the idea. We'll have more emphasis clearly on the oral part of exposition and the way you interact in a oral way. So you talk about corporate finance because the exam will be 100% oral. So there won't be any written parts and so on. And anyway, your proficiency, I think, will increase dramatically after we've covered all the topics. Originally, there could be an auxiliary teacher, someone that will help me out. This time we'll try with our colleague, Professor S. Gennari, the English L2 language teacher. We'll try to have some classes together and we'll try basically to carry on a combined project as a team where you interact with both of us and you'll try to understand the subject in English by learning the subject in English at the same time. So, as usual, I will use a lot case studies. There will be some theory, and for the theoretical part, or at least for the explanation, it's just this one. I will use YouTube so that I will put my classes on YouTube directly so that you will be able to access it, listen to them, and as much as you will need. And depending on your needs, it can be many times, it can be just once. At the same time, the core of the course will be carried out in virtual rooms using Zoom. So there will be questions, there will be interactions, there will be you preparing a type of presentation for each of the main areas that we're going to discuss. And then there will be an oral interrogation about basically what you have learned. You'll choose the part that you prefer, and you'll personalize the presentation so that you will be able to show your capabilities, okay, your competences in terms of talking about the subject in English. And clearly, I'll make some questions. So, the final grading will be based on your contribution to the course in the open discussion rooms and within your group. The way of your expression basically will have roughly a third of the impression. So the way you speak English, the way you let me know your knowledge in English, the way you interact with Professoressa Gennari in English. And at the same time, there will be also this product, i.e. those presentations, those documents that you will prepare so that you will have something there to stay. We have, as I said, 4 parts. So we have basic financial management with a twist. We have the access to public markets via an IPO, so an initial public offering, a listing on the stock exchange, or the issue of debt, public debt, i.e. issues of bonds. Then we have a part of mergers and acquisition, and the last part is about the alternative sources of capital that are available, especially to startups. So, what do we have in the first part? In the first part, I've tried to bridge from what you already know to something that we will study for the first time and for the sole time in English. But we'll start with something that is already known to you, i.e. financial statement analysis. Why? Well, simply because we understand how to use financial analysis that you well know, but in English, and applied to case studies that are taken from the US, for example, so from the English-speaking world. So we won't be analyzing Italian companies, or if we are analyzing Italian companies, we'll be using their presentation in English, okay? And then there will be a focus on how corporations, medium to large size corporations, basically use banks as source of short-term funding. So we'll have a look at classical instruments that everybody must know, especially now that with the COVID-19 emergency, liquidity has become an issue that threatens the survival of a firm, of a company, okay? So remember, financial equilibrium comes always first and comes before economic equilibrium. In the short run or in the medium run, you can make a loss. A company could make a loss, but if financial equilibrium conditions are met, the company can survive. The minute that the company cannot repay a bond, cannot repay a loan, cannot basically fulfill the expectations of the lenders, the company goes bust, goes in bankruptcy. So financial equilibrium, especially in conditions of stress like the one we are living currently, is absolutely crucial. And we'll look basically at the classical instruments that are used by companies all over the world to ensure financial equilibrium in a company. So this is step number 1. Financial analysis in English and short-term financial instruments for companies. We then have a look at IPOs, initial public offerings, when a company decides to move from the private sector, from the unlisted sector to the public sector. What are the implications? What are the advantages, the several advantages that this move implies, but also the disadvantages of being a public company, because there are a few and a few important ones. We'll have a look at some especially interesting cases. We all know that we started the year looking at Ferretti, waiting for their IPO to come to the stock exchange. It has never come. Then we look at Pirelli, which has been taken private and then relisted again. Levi's, Uber, all these are successful IPOs. And we might also have a look at what happened to Saudi Aramco, which was the biggest IPO of all times. But, it didn't come easy, and it was just a local IPO. Going to mergers and acquisitions, we talk about the moves that a company takes when it wants to take over another company, or when the two companies agree to combine their business, so making a business combination. So we have this very fascinating part of corporate finance that sometimes, especially in bull markets and in times when everything is rosy and fine, is very, very active. So last year we had the news that FCA, so the Fiat Group, and Peugeot, PSA, will combine, making probably one of the largest car makers, at least in terms of volume, in the world. So we'll have a look at one case in particular, which happened exactly 1 year ago these days, which is the takeover of Anadarko Petroleum, but Occidental, and the battle between Chevron and Occidental. So we'll have a look exactly at what can happen in a transaction when there are friendly parties involved, and instead when the things don't go very smoothly. And then clearly we have a very large banking merger, possible acquisition on the table here in Italy between Banca Intesa and UBI Banca, what looks to be like a hostile takeover bid of UBI Banca by Intesa, and we have followed it. It's clearly suspended given the conditions of the economy, but it's still on the table. So we'll have a look at it. And finally, we look at how a company, maybe a startup, so someone that hasn't got a track record, someone that is just has a very good idea and wants to get some money, some equity, some funding in order to start its activity, can do. And we had the UBI Banca webinar on startup funding, on the business plan. And we look more in details about what happens with business angels, with private equity firms, and finally with crowdfunding. Usually it's a very popular subject. It's very interesting, and basically it gives you the possible key to open up a business almost immediately. That's it. So after we have completed this part of the syllabus, you'll know much more about corporate finance than before. Hopefully you'll be able to explain yourself and to express yourself about this topic in English. So both your competence in the subject and in the foreign language will increase dramatically. That's the purpose of the classes that we're going to have. Usually we have basically 1 week in which we follow the first part, so basic financial management and financial analysis, followed by IPOs. And then in the following week, we look at mergers acquisition and possibility of looking into private equity or crowdfunding. I've kept the timetable flexible so that if we need more time to go through something, we can stop and then adjust the timing to your needs. And that's something that we will see shortly. But still, that's the purpose. And then I will leave you much of the time, a lot of the time, to you to express yourself and to present your works, so that by talking, by presenting in English and so on, you'll acquire a proficiency that is very important in the current working environment or academic environment. Okay? Clearly, we'll finish everything by May the 15th. After May the 15th, we'll start a general review of all the subject so that you can be ready for the exam. And that's about it. So, this is just an introduction. You can get accustomed to the way I talk, I express myself in English, the way that we talk about the possibility of learning a subject, a business economic subject in English, and I'm very curious to see what happens when we'll discuss about the same things in a while. So I suggest that then we do our first Zoom meeting of the day in the next 5 minutes so that we can talk and you can give me some feedback immediately about that. I'll send you the invitation immediately. And we see at 8:30 a.m. on Zoom. Okay? Bye-bye.